Hello and welcome to Military Mayday, where we're pointing out a few pieces of the chessboard. Got a few stories here on Russia that you'll find pretty interesting. I know I do. I'm going to do a barrage of them, about 4 or 5 stories. I was sick a couple days ago and had a couple days I had to catch up on some things, so that's why I haven't put out a little video or anything. But I know a lot of stuff has been happening. So we're going to get into this, but first, if you like the channel, subscribe to the channel, help me out in that way. I've got a new headset too, by the way. My other one had some sound issues. I hope this sounds pretty good. We'll find out. Okay, Russia drone attack on Ukraine violates NATO airspace over Romania, prompting German fighter jet response. Russian drone attack violated airspace. Scramble and response. German news channel reported on December 14th. Although German crews identified Russian aircraft through visual contact, there was no NATO order to shoot them down. One drone exploded over Romania, preliminary data suggests. The Romanian Defense Ministry reported a crater 1.5 meters deep that had been found near a village in Grind, which is 6.5 kilometers from Romania's border with Ukraine. The ministry stated the possible probability that the crater was made by the Russian drone. Bucharest also deployed an F-16 planes to carry out patrols. The ministry strongly condemns the attack by the Russian Federation on individual objects and the elements of civilian infrastructure in Ukrainian ports in Danube, the Romanian authorities said. Yeah, but they won't condemn. Nobody seems to condemn the Gaza stuff. These attacks are unjustified and seriously violate the norms of international humanitarian law. The Ukrainian Air Force reported air defense intercepting. Most were shot down over the Odessa Oblast, where their air raid alerted lasted for over 7 hours. The debris from the Russian drones used in the attacks on Ukraine has been found in the territory of Romania several times. NATO does not believe that the attacks are deliberate. Romania has installed an anti-drone system on the border with Ukraine, and residents of border settlements receive notifications if there is a threat of debris falling. Will you support Ukraine's free press? I doubt it's free. Ukrainian troops unable to respond to Russian attacks, says lawmakers. The Ukrainian military ammunition stocks are now running so low that units are unable to respond to Russian attacks, according to the prominent member of Ukraine's parliament. Alexander Ustinova said Ukraine today has half the munitions in its arsenal than it had a year ago, with supplies of ammunition from the West over the last 2 months dropping to their lowest level since the beginning of the war. They have nothing to respond with, Ustinova, a politician who is well briefed on military matters, told ABC News. The Ukrainian politician's stark warning comes amid warnings from U.S. officials that funding for military aid to the Ukraine is running out, with a Ukrainian military official confirming that ammunition stocks were very low. A deal between the Biden administration and leading Republicans to secure an additional $60 billion in addition to funding for the war in Ukraine remains elusive because the two sides have not reached a separate agreement on new controls on the U.S. border. Ustinova, who works in both U.S. and Ukrainian officials on accountability for U.S. military aid, said that rapidly diminishing ammunition stocks were having a profound impact on the morale of Ukrainian soldiers. She said troops are so demoralized and disappointed and upset at the fact that they don't have the means to fight. I'm sure that's what they're saying. Damn it. Yeah, I'm sure them 50 and 60-year-old men that they're forcing into war is probably unhappy. In recent weeks, Russian forces have been on the offensive in eastern Ukraine, particularly around the embattlement city of whatever it is, and pushed Ukrainian troops out of small areas of land in that region. However, Ustinova, who is also former anti-corruption campaigner, warned that Ukrainian losses could mount if additional U.S. funding for the war is not forthcoming soon. "We are going to lose more positions," she said. "If there is no support, Ukraine will lose. Politicians will have to take the responsibility of Ukraine losing and the threat of the big war in Europe." Yeah. Well, problem is that without just Americans' complete 100% backing, yes, you're going to lose. And I would probably just work a deal out personally. But they're just going to keep spending our money, sending it over there, and nobody's going to do anything about it. They're just going to drag this on, a slow cook. How crazy. Vladimir Putin says no peace in Ukraine until goals are achieved as NATO chief warns of a real risk Russia won't stop at Ukraine. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has vowed there will be no peace in Ukraine until his goals are achieved. And offering rare detail on Moscow's invasion, Mr. Putin dismissed the need for a second wave of mobilization of reservists, saying there are around 617,000 Russian soldiers currently in Ukraine, including around 224 troops who were called up to fight alongside professional Russian military forces. Mr. Putin did not hold his traditional press conference last year after his military failed to take Kiev, as the Ukrainian army retook swaths of territory in the east and south of the country. But the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky returning to Washington to plead for U.S. aid and a stalling counteroffensive and reports of fracturing Western support for Ukraine, the Russian president has decided to face the media. Mr. Putin opened the press conference saying there is no need for mobilization, following questions that Russians were concerned by the prospect. The Russian president reiterated that Moscow's goal in Ukraine, denazification, demilitarization, and deneutral status of Ukraine, remained unchanged. The neo-Nazi comment is one that has been often repeated by Mr. Putin, but never found to be based in truth. Well, bullshit. I seen all the Nazi signs and hand signals and everything just some years back over when they were voting. You'd have to know what I'm talking about. Mr. Putin has also demanded that Ukraine remain neutral and not join the NATO alliance. There will be peace and we'll achieve our goals. NATO chief warns of real risk. NATO chief Stoltenberg will not stop an invasion of Ukraine. If Putin wins in Ukraine, there's a real risk of his aggression will not end there. Our support is not charity. It is an investment in our security. The only way to reach just and lasting solution is to convince President Putin that they will not win on the battlefield. And the only way to ensure that President Putin realizes that he is not winning on the battlefield is to continue to support Ukraine. The NATO Secretary General comments came as support for further aid to Ukraine faltered in the United States and European Union as a result of international political maneuvering. EU leaders were gathered in Brussels on Thursday for a summit in which aid to Kiev and Ukraine's bid one-day joint bloc were in the headlines. Yeah, a lot of that's been getting shot down. I guess they're just going to give it all to Israel. I don't know. Russian soldiers trained to survive amid heavy losses. This is Newsweek. Russian army training will change to focus more on preparing troops for high-intensity combat operations in response to experienced space in Ukraine, it has been reported. Russia has suffered high casualties in its invasion, with a U.S. intelligence assessment suggesting this week that Moscow has lost 87% of the total number of active duty ground troops it had prior to launching the invasion. 87%? I don't believe that number whatsoever. Man, some of these American news trash companies, really. The British Ministry of Defense said that there has been a huge spike in Russian casualties linked to Moscow's offensive launch in October towards Atkivah. With the newspaper said there would be a new approach to training. Vladimir Putin's troops for the front line, outlining what is described as updated techniques to help soldiers survive in difficult situations. The paper said that the training was aimed primarily at those who will have to participate in these special military operations, using the official Kremlin term for its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Colonel Alexander Sumpton, associated professor, Russian University of Economics, told that the draft document had been drawn up after interviews with soldiers, sergeants, and junior officers who had endured all the hardships of frontline services. We had to find out what qualities the fighters on the front line lack in modern warfare conditions. We are confronting Ukrainian forces. Physical training is the basis that allows soldiers and officers to effectively carry out their combat mission and survive in difficult conditions. Yeah. So there you have it. Russian soldiers trained to survive amid heavy losses. I would just assume that's how most militaries would train at some point. Russia installed trench ceilings in Ukraine to hide troop movements. Here's the picture of that. This is really fucking awesome. I've never even heard of this before. But this way you can't see anything they're doing. Anyway, how many troops are going where, how far out. Probably going right in underground. There's materials. Various sources suggest that a range of materials is disposable of trench coverage. It appears to be roof construction, typically involved quick assembly, metal profiles for a sturdy framework. On a parallel note, Russia seems to have substantially supplied material and employs it in substantial quantities. Yeah, I gotta stop. I'm running out of time, but anyway, like, subscribe, toodaloo.